Today we're going to talk about sine, cosine, and tangent. This is your last prerequisite for the Algebra 2 standards. So with trig ratios, you have sine, cosine, and tangent, and they can only be used with right triangles. You will be working a lot with the opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. These all refer to the sides of a triangle in reference to the given angle. So here, the angle given is this theta. So the opposite is across from it, and the adjacent just means next to. And here you have the right angle, and the hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. On this one, you've got the angle given here. Your opposite side is over here because it's across from the angle, where your adjacent side is right next to it. And your hypotenuse, again, is always across from the right angle. So notice the side across from the angle given, theta, is the opposite side. The side next to the angle given, theta, is the adjacent side. And the hypotenuse, again, is always across from the right angle. So these are things you need to remember. Sine of theta is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Cosine of theta is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. Theta is just going to be replaced with an angle measure. So when we're trying to determine which one to use, it depends on the information that we're given. So here are the steps. We're going to identify the angle given, label the sides with information, and then determine which trig ratio to use. So in the first example, we're going to identify the angle given, our 25 degrees, label the sides with information. So the one across from it is the opposite side. The one next to is the adjacent side. And this time there's no information for the hypotenuse, so we're not going to label it, because now we determine which trig ratio to use. Well, the one that uses opposite and adjacent is tangent. So we're going to use tangent to solve this problem. So we put the angle measure in for theta. So we have the tangent of 25 is equal to the opposite, which is 10, over the adjacent. And for this one, it's x. This is just a simple ratio or proportion. And so we put tangent of 25 over 1, and we cross multiply. This gives us x tangent of 25 is equal to 10, because tangent of 25 times x is x tangent of 25. 1 times 10 is 10. Then we divide by the tangent of 25. You want to make sure your calculator's in degree mode. And you get x equals 21.45. So let's look at the second example. We're going to identify the angle given. That's 39 degrees. Label the sides that have information. So if we look across from the angle, we get the 18, which is opposite. Then across from the right angle is our hypotenuse. So this one has opposite and hypotenuse, which means we're going to use the trig ratio sine. So here we have the sine of 39, opposite over hypotenuse, so 18 over x. We make a proportion out of it, cross multiply, and we get x sine of 39 is equal to 18. We divide by the sine of 39, and we get 28.6. For our third example, we're going to follow the same steps. We're going to identify the angle given, 53 degrees, label the sides. So we've got one right next to the angle. This is the adjacent side. And then we've got one across from the hypotenuse, or across from the right angle, which is the hypotenuse. So now we're going to determine which trig ratio to use. With the adjacent and hypotenuse, we're going to use cosine. So we have cosine of 53 is equal to adjacent, which is x, over the hypotenuse, 17. We're going to create a proportion and cross multiply. This time, we get 17 times the cosine of 53 is equal to 1x. So we just put that in our calculator, and we get x equals 10.2. Now, if we're trying to find an angle, we're going to use the same process, but then we're going to use the inverse function, sine inverse, cosine inverse, or tangent inverse, to get the angle measure. So with our first example, We don't know the angle, but we have the adjacent side and the hypotenuse. So we set it up. Adjacent and hypotenuse is cosine. So we have the cosine of x is equal to 14 over 42. And now we're just going to use the inverse function on our calculator and type in the inverse of cosine 14 over 42, and we hit equals, and it'll give you 71. Make sure your calculator is in degree mode. Here's another example. Again, we're not given the angle, that's what we're trying to find, but we have the side next to, which is the adjacent side, and the side across from the angle, which is the opposite side. So opposite over adjacent is tangent. So we plug that in. Opposite is 17 over adjacent 32. We do the tangent inverse of 17 over 32, and we get 28 degrees. Now you try. Go ahead and pause the video and try to do these problems. When you're done, hit play and the answers will pop up.